Hello, all. I have to say, I don't know if you are on early enough, Meredith, to see during the bedtime story a litany of children, well, parents and children, but it sounds children saying, "Press record," because I forgot once, and that's who I am now. I am the guy who doesn't press record because that happened. Which is actually, go ahead.
How affirming that they so badly want the stories to be recorded. And what's so sweet is that the ones who are saying press record are the ones who are here live who don't need it recorded.
Right.
So in a way,
Yeah.
there's an act of generosity there.
Right.
Press record because there are other children who need this too.
Right. Yeah. Well, it also speaks to, and actually having to do with the story tonight, it speaks to, I use the word stubborn, but I think it's different with children. I mean, some children are certainly stubborn, but it is true that when there's a big event, it has a big impact and behavior will be gathered around it. Now, this happens with adults as well, but children are particularly impressionable, of course, and there's lots of firsts. And if that first or if that moment of vulnerability is linked in with a bit of trauma, well, that can really reverberate forward. So I'm not likening me not pressing record to trauma, but it was an event. It was something I made a big deal about. And so that was locked in. That's a locked in moment now. When you see David before he's doing the story and he hasn't pressed record, there's a real potential that such a thing could happen again.
Mm.
What did you hear tonight, Meredith?
Well, it's so interesting, David. What I heard tonight is actually somewhat reified by the conversation we're having now almost randomly about pressing record, although with a little bit of a different nuance. I heard two things tonight in the story, well, a few, but two that I'll start with. One is just the anxiety of childhood, the condition of anxiety. Anxiety is being coined now as the illness of our times. It's really what drives, I think, many of us on a core level. And for children, they're experiencing anxiety in ways that, other than if you were in a trauma environment, certainly, but many children are experiencing anxiety. And that's certainly a reverberation of what's happening, rippling out into what parents are holding now, what families are holding, what communities are holding, and what is being managed globally. And I was thinking about these capacities that these two main characters in the story were building on. There was this anxiety to try something new, this fear that I can't do it, this fear of the unknown, this fear of exploring something that was not comfortable. And how then through someone else modeling it, or it being not a shared experience as much as a confidence that is gained because someone else can do something. So this layer of how we partner with each other for support, but then also how we take our own strivings and we look at what others can do and we gain confidence. Not to compare and say, oh, they can do that, I never could, but what is the strength of the human spirit, this collective capacity. We can't all do everything, but somehow collectively we cover the bases. Because where I don't have strength, I was thinking about my professional partnership with David, and how where I don't have strength, he just comes right in, and where he's not as strong, I just come right in. And then there's this relaxing that can happen, not only because someone else can do it when I can't, but also I look at David's many capacities that are not natural strengths of mine, and I step into that. Storytelling, for one. I mean, I'm discovering I'm a natural storyteller in my own right, not like David in the same way, but by practicing and modeling myself after what he so seamlessly can do, I'm stepping into a new capacity, and that's giving me confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I got from these two characters, and how my hope is that as the children drift off into sleep, that somewhere the inner workings of whatever magic takes place in dreamland um, can help them wake tomorrow somewhat refreshed with the thought of, oh, I can, or it's not so
Mm-hmm.
scary, or
Mm-hmm.
so such a simple story I found very multifaceted.
Well, and that's kind of what I would like to bring is the simplicity of the story, the form of the story is it's the same story told over and over throughout time, where there is our main character, Piper, who needs to leave her current situation and meets with challenge after leaving in the form of the sounding of the alarm, and now has a task, which is to overcome her own anxiety, meets with a helper, finds the solution, the elixir, the tool, what have you, in the form of someone else's parallel experience, and then can return, the heroes return back now with this gift. And we didn't get the final chapter, which is to actually see it demonstrated, but it wasn't necessary for this because we had already seen how this was going to play out in the form of Buford, the other frog. So we already have a model for how this is going to play out. We just know that it's going to be the similar experience for Piper. And so this can be a model that you use in your own storytelling, in your own content creation, which is if there's something that you want for your child, some bit of information to go deep, preparing them for some big event, worrying about some aspect of who they are and wishing some transformation on them, or helping them with a strong emotion, whatever it is, you have them where they are now, and you have them moving out of where they are now, facing the dragon in one way or another, receiving a bit of wisdom or a tool. A lot of Sparkle stories, they get a tool. They get some sort of tactic. The main characters will learn some way of managing whatever the issue is. And then they return back, not necessarily to the same spot or the same home, but they return to a place of stasis, of rest, with this new tool, able to now be in a place of authority, having learned it, they can now teach it and help others. So they leave in need, learn something, and return able to now be able to help others that are in need. So little storytelling tip right there. That model, you can tell thousands of stories and never get tired of using that. Anything you want to add before? I think we have a few questions and
We
some
do.
things to say.
Let's hear from our participants and see what's living for them.
Now, some earlier statements were corroborating what you were feeling with the children and them wanting to press record for me. I was reading those, and it was kind of affirming their relationship with me and wanting to have agency and help out, and I really appreciate that. And then a comment about anxiety and how pervasive it is. I liked the idea in the story that it's okay to wait. It's okay to be eager to do something new and realize we're not quite ready yet, and to take more time to get there. That's a gift too. I wasn't even really thinking that and aware of that in the story, but it's true. The parents are not pushing this child to get over this fear. They've given the child space, and who knows how this worked out with Buford, but would that have been effective had it happened earlier, leaving the child to actually arrive? And so many of these stories show up in our day-to-day life when my daughter finds a connection between her life and something she's heard in the story. Like earlier this week, when she became excited at the thought of having morning lessons, just like Martin and Sylvia do, these stories help give her an anchor for understanding her own experience. This is a tactic that I'll do in a lot of stories where our main character learns something that we want the listener to learn. We did a story on divorce a long time ago, where the main character's parents were going through a divorce, but the main character was helping her dog understand what was happening, why there are now two homes. So the girl was teaching the dog what the storyteller wanted to teach the listener. So that sort of teaching thing of her helping Buford, and by demonstrating that, the children listening will do the same thing, will receive the same guidance. I have such a hard time telling stories. You are very inspirational to me and helping me to believe that at some point I will be able to do it. Thank you for this. You're very welcome. I'm glad I'm an inspiration. I'd love to be an inspiration for you to start immediately, to just jump right in. Because we say this a lot, Meredith and I, but you're already doing it. We just don't have consciousness that we're doing it, that I am telling a story right now. It sounds like teaching. When I answer the question, how are you? I'm going to respond with a story, a short story often, but it's still a story. We story all day long. It's just we don't really have consciousness to it, and we exalt and put on a pedestal once upon a time stories because we think that those are supposed to be done to a certain excellence. But it's not like music. It can be the entertaining kind. Yeah, I get it. You want those folks to be practiced and good at what they do. This kind of storytelling that I'm really practiced in is purposefully riddled with mistakes and awkwardness and all of that stuff, because the child and you are experiencing the wisdom real time and are generating it together, discovering the story together, and that edge to it is exhilarating. You can't get that from a prepared entertainer. You can only get that by someone just being brave enough to step into that and say, sure, I'll give it a shot, even though I'm no good at it. I'm way more practiced than Meredith, and she's the brave one here. Me stepping forward and telling a story is not that brave because I've done it a bunch, but not so much for Meredith. And so she gets the applause every time it's time to demonstrate this.
And David has said many times, and as a trained Waldorf teacher, I would often think of the guidance, wisdom, counsel from Rudolf Steiner, the founder of Waldorf education, who would say that it's the striving that the children are really, really seeing. That's really what they pick up on. When they see the authenticity of the teacher's striving, of the parents' striving, children are not looking for perfect. Mm-mm. They are just not looking for perfect. And I really believe that that's what my students those many years saw in me. Really, it was very real. There was just no question that I was always showing up and striving, no matter how imperfect it was. And my two daughters as well. And also, David, just to come back and underscore that I didn't call myself a storyteller. And then at one point, David just said, yeah, but you've been teaching for 30 years. You tell stories all the time. And as a parent, you tell stories all the time. And so my invitation to the attendee who was brave enough to share her own insecurities about telling stories is, let yourself mess it up. Like, just practice and see what it feels like to just blurt out a story, and just that voice that's judging you, that little voice in your head, just push that aside and just see what happens. It's that gnawing voice that stands in our way of us just being able to let the story come through us. So give yourself permission to mess it up.
Yeah. 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 Like cleaning, it's good enough. It's clean enough. Doesn't have to be spotless. All right. Last couple comments and then we'll call it a night. My child and I have been telling the story where I do a line or two and then he adds a few, and this has been enjoyable for us. Yeah, I really enjoy that as well.
Love that.
That's super fun. It's the fourth pillar of our storying protocol is allowance. It's a letting go, and it forces that right there. You have to pay attention and listen to what your son says so that you can then do the next line. Makes you really present. I love that your child does that with you. We might have to try that too. Yeah, we're all on board there. Thank you.
Yeah.
The best. All right. Well, tomorrow night's parent time is contingent on what happens with tomorrow's bedtime. So if we do the bedtime, then we'll do the parent time unless the bedtime ends up being recorded, which it might. But we'll sort it out. We're going to be safe, and if there's no bedtime story from me, maybe give it a shot.
Yeah.
All right, team.
Good night,
Good to
all.
see you. Good night.